Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is Wednesday, July the 26th, in the year of our Lord 2023. We're going to be discussing, all things Washington as always, and we reemphasize it mostly each and every time we're on the air. We're bringing about this podcast discussion for political solutions and hoping to have more partisanship, more compromise, more working across the aisles, if you will. And we're staunchly Democrat, as we've said over and over again. Is the Democratic Party the saving grace for America? Right now, the answer is yes, because we haven't seen anything from the other side of the aisle to show us that they're putting the country first, the laws of this country, the Constitution. They haven't put forth a candidate that thus far, that shows that, the country comes first and what America stands for truly comes first. Now, we're dealing with a tale of two parties, one that doubles down and one that stands down. Now, we've given you, instances of what a Democratic candidate or the Democratic senator, whether they hold an office, whether they're running for office. We give you constant examples of where, they've stood down for the sake of what's best for the country, for the sake of, keeping the country moving forward in the spirit of political harmony. They've agreed to disagree on the Democratic end. You can go so far back as the election of 2000. At that time, Vice President Gore knew that there was something in the water that wasn't clean. Down in Florida with the butterfly ballots, with the hanging chads. But for the sake of the country, the former vice president reluctantly bowed out. Here you have a state being governed by the brother of the Republican candidate running for the Oval Office. I mean, it just doesn't pass the smell test that, here we have the election of 2000 that hangs in the balance, by one state. And is it coincidence? Is it just by chance? Is it just by, the roll of the dice? But at the end of the day, what happened was the former vice president stood down. We gave you one of the latest examples. The Senator Al Franken bowed out, resigned his seat. There was once upon a time John Edwards, who, if I'm not mistaken, fathered a child out of wedlock outside of his marriage, stood down, bowed out, doing what he thought or they thought was best for America, best for the American people and best to, protect the Constitution and everything America stood for. It's not to say that former Vice President Gore agreed with the way everything went and agreed with the Supreme Court decision, but it's just what I said, an example of how you have Democratic candidates who are willing to, for the sake of the country, step down, stand aside, to let democracy continue its progress. And on the other hand, we have the Republican Party that doubles down. And, with the Republican debates less than a month away, I mean, we shouldn't feel no ways tired when we're defending democracy. Democrats, we have to hold the line. We have to hold the line to ensure that, there is a chance of there being a safe democracy that we can pass on to our children. Right now, it seems as if, the Republican Party wants to blow the whole thing up because they can't win because of a changing demographic, a change in voters' minds, in young voters, versus old voters, and so they don't want to make the case. They don't want to make the case. It seems that they can't get their way. They're willing to just blow the whole thing up and start over again. It's kind of equivalent to some kid who brings his ball And all of a sudden, when the game's not going his way, he wants to take his ball and go home. This is, kind of what we see going on in Republican circles, Republican politics today. Now, what this is all about, too, also to my fellow Democrats, is power sharing. Because they know if you vote, then you vote out this old states' rights ideology once again. Now, the leading nominee for the Republican Party just so happens to be the former president, Donald J. Trump, none other than. And he hasn't won since 2016. He hasn't won since 2016. And so, it should be somewhat alarming and gets us motivated to get out to the polls once again. Because as we've said on previous broadcasts, it's not that Republican politicians, senators, congressmen, lobbyists, whoever, dislike the Trump message. It's just that he hasn't won since 2016. So there you have it. It's not about the man and the message, as flawed a candidate as he is. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney sees it and is trying to do anything she can to keep him out or from near the Oval Office ever again. So it's something that should get us motivated because, as I said, he's not the man in the message. It's the fact that he hasn't won since 2016. So picture that, if you will. The former president winning, won a second term, held the Senate, produced a red wave. Then, you would have Republicans in all Republican circles, moderate, Freedom Caucus, alt-right, middle of the road right. They all throw their weight right there behind him. But they're scattered. They're fractured now because he hasn't won since 2016. So, let that be a motivating factor for us as Democrats. If he's the leading nominee, if he's put up again, now we know that, he's some 70-something million strong on his best day, on his best election day. We saw that in the year 2020, after the social unrest, after, saying that there was going to be a wall that Mexico was going to be built, along with other unfulfilled promises, after all the corruption, people around him going to jail, after all the acting administrators, a botched COVID response. He's still the leading nominee right now. Right now. So, there's some 70-something plus million that's right there strongly behind the former president. And he can do no wrong. Now, we broke it down to you. And, it's sad to say that in the year 2023, as a country, and we left you with this thought on our last broadcast, we asked you to consider that, here we are as a country, just celebrated our 247th birthday as a country. Now, by, human years, animal years, maybe for a tree, or something of that nature, that's pretty old. That's what you call right old. But for a country, that's, still it's somewhere in its infancy. It's still in its beginning stages. It's still young. Technically, even though that's 247 years without rounding the number, we haven't reached a quarter of a millennia yet. And here we are, seem to be unraveling at the seams because we've took something that happened in 2 centuries ago, in the 1800s, where America was trying to decide whether it was going to be half slave or half free. Half slave or half free, or states' rights, ideology versus, the union, versus, the federal government having the right and using its authority to be a system of checks and balances, if you will, for states' rights, good old boyism, slavery, rampant discrimination, rampant pollution, rampant abuse of women and our children. So, what has happened since then? The ideology died on the battlefield. It died on the battlefield, by most accounts from historians. Gettysburg was the last ditch effort of the Confederacy of the Old South. And so from then to now, it died on the battlefield then in a physical way, in a physical force way, much bloodshed. And somehow it was able to morph itself into a legislative agenda and move into the halls of Washington, D.C., move into the halls of power in Washington. Now, a lot of this was due to, at the time, when it began to morph into this legislative agenda from the battlefield. We didn't have, and this goes out a lot to that 90-something plus percentile of Democrats. We didn't have the right to vote. We wasn't voting in large numbers. We didn't have that power. We were intimidated. We were eliminated through poll taxes, literacy tests, or anything else that, deep South Republicans could think of to keep us away from the polls. But now you're power sharing. And so, as we discussed on this broadcast, there are no more excuses. If we vote, then we win that battle where we're not fighting from a reactionary standpoint, if you will. Now that we're power sharing, if we're not proactive, then the finger only points at us. So, there you have it. There, from then to now, you have that power. You have it. And so, it's one of those things now, even though we're still in our infancy as a country, we're pretty much to a point where you're going to use it or you're going to lose it. That's where it's pretty much at. We've seen the attack from the right on, a free and fair election. We've seen it, and it still harkens back to the same thing. Who is going to have the power in America? Where does the power lie? Does it lie, primarily with Caucasians and not so much with so-called minorities? Or is it going to be an equal power sharing between all the races? And so, that's the hang-up of the Republican Party. And, therefore, Make America Great Again was able to rear its ugly head. So here we are now. We're in America. We're operating under a three-party system with only two of the parties actually producing legitimate contenders for the White House or for any congressional Senate seat or what have you. We have only two parties here. And you see what it is. Seeing should be believing. Seeing should be believing. If you want to look at, the last two Republican administrations versus the last two Democratic administrations, we don't see this in the Democratic Party, a doubling down or a feeling of, we can't really trust what our politicians are saying. And that's not to say that, Democrats don't speak in half truths. That's not to say that, Democrats are not subject to bribes or being corrupt. It's not saying that. What we are saying here at Soluble Opposition is that when we see Democrats of whatever, stripe, senator, congressman, presidential candidate, governor, mayor, we see these people of Democratic stripe, when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, they're not trying to hide it. They're acknowledging it for the most part. Or if anyone has, any name that they can put out there, let them speak now or forever hold your peace. Bring the names to our attention. And as Democrats, to stay on that higher level, that patriotic statesmanship level as it relates to serving the country, serving under a constitution with a set of laws and a system of checks and balances. We owe it to the future generations first and foremost, and then to the country to, try to hold that line of integrity, that line of ethics, and do finger point, do name call if it's necessary, because this brings immediate attention to the situation, and we deal with it there. We don't try to sweep it up under the rug or explain it away. like you see happening constantly in Republican circles. Like you see constantly happening in Republican circles now to solve. Will Republicans more reach across the aisle as they continue to lose elections, as they continue to lose more seats? Will they change their message? I mean, right now, it's like it's dumb and dumber. You know, for example, it's dumb for the Republicans to keep using the same tactics out of the same playbook. You would think that, you know, we should change up these plays because they know what we're doing and they know how to counter. But here they are, you know, coming with the same old playbook, which is dumb, as I said. Now, what's even dumber is if you, the American people, the American voter, is going to go for it again. So this is what you have here. You know, you have a situation of dumb and dumber. And who's going to checkmate the other? Who's going to win out? I mean, once again, you know, coming out of the same playbook. And we told you this before, you know, the midterms even happened. We had already let you know that if it was important to get out and rock the vote, because if Republicans won, if there was any red wave, or there was any majority that they had in the halls of power, that they were not going to be interested in legislating. They were only going to be interested in investigating. And so that's it. They fell right back into that same niche, into that same rut. That's the dumb roll. And who is it up next? None other than Hunter Biden himself. Come on down. You are the next contestant in the Republicans' line of fire to investigate. Now, as I said, you know, we're mostly taught to sweep around our own door, you know, before we try to go and sweep around someone else's door. So, you know, here we are in this present day and time. As I said, Wednesday, July 26th, in the year of our Lord, 2023. And here's another investigation in a long line list of investigations. We reported it to you here at Soluble. Please note, we reported it to you here before the 2022 midterms. And so here you have the president's son, you know, pleading out to what? Misdemeanors and some, you know, off the wall gun charge. And boy, now you have to, did we really dodge a bullet here? If this is one of those moments where we go, whoo, well, we really dodged a national security scare there. We really took down Hunter Biden because, you know, the whole thing was on the brink of collapse. This whole system of democracy was on the brink of collapse had we not gotten to Hunter Biden in time. Is this where we're at? And if we're not, you have to ask yourself, how much more longer are you, are we, as American voters, particularly Republicans, gonna fall into the dumber role? Gonna fall into the dumber role. Now, we have climate disasters, you know, happening all over the country on a regular basis now. Like I said, gun violence is at an all-time high. The economy is doing good, but it can do better. Foreign policy can be strengthened. You know, should we look into tighter regulation control for the railroad industry? There are a lot of things that we can be dealing with here and now, but here are the Republicans with their majority in the House. And what does the speaker do? He'd rather go fishing. He'd rather go fishing on a fishing expedition, you know, to see what he can reel in on Hunter Biden. And, you know, right now he's caught 2 misdemeanors and some off-the-wall gun charge. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're fishing and you're really out there for the big one, when you catch these kind of fish as a speaker going after, you know, a knockout punch for a president's son to show how corrupt he is, these are the kind of fish that you throw back and let them grow a little more. Now, you know, you'll hear the speaker say that, you know, he's getting privilege. You know, there's 2. We're going to see if there are 2 sets of laws here. Huh? Are you kidding me? We're still waiting right now with bated breath. You know, somewhat, you know, right here in this tense moment in time in American history to actually see if the former president is above the law. with all these charges and indictments being leveled against him. But here you have Speaker McCarthy still, yet and still, able to fix his mouth to say, you know, is it two sets of rules? Is it two sets of justice here? The feds has already come at Hunter. Here's a news flash for the speaker. The feds has already brought everything that they could bring. The federal government does not bring charges that they can't prove where a person is guilty. They're not going to go down that road unless they can bring in a conviction. Everyone knows this. But yet, here you have the speaker. Here you have the speaker in true Republican hypocritical fashion, you know, questioning whether or not there, you know, two sets of rules and two sets of laws. Are these the acts and words of a statesman, a patriot, someone who loves their country? Are these the acts of someone who puts country above party when he's doing this type of thing? So to the 90-something percentile, you know, when we show up, as I said, and I can't help but to emphasize that we win. Now, to this so-called minority, or the 90-something percentile of Negroes who vote Democrat, if we hold that 90+ percentile, you know, it's plain and simple. We win. We have to get our numbers out. This is what the big fuss is all about from the right. They know that if you show up, we're going to win, and they don't have a chance because the demographics are changing. And this is not to say that the Democratic Party is a saving grace for so-called minorities, especially Negroes in this country. We're our own saving grace. We're going to have to do for us what needs to be done. I mean, but don't get me wrong, holding sway in Washington, you know, look at the Democratic Party and look at the Republican Party. Which party gives us more seats at the table? Which party gives us more seats at the table? It's just that plain and simple. So, you know, when we have these seats at the table, it's not to say that, okay, we have these seats at the table and we're going to be saved by the Democratic Party. No, now you have the ability and the wherewithal and the platform to save yourself, save your communities, you know, give your constituents a voice. That's what it's about. You don't have that in the Republican Party. You don't have these seats at the table. You see, this is the party that, you know, was born out of the Dixiecrats, with a revolt from Strom Thurmond because the military was getting ready to be integrated by Truman. And from then to now, where is the so-called best man, whether he be Caucasian, Negro, Hispanic, or what have you? You don't see it. You don't see it, you know, may the best man win in this party. It seems now, and we could be wrong, you know, if someone out there gives us a, you know, a viable case where we're wrong, we'll listen. But we don't see it. We don't see so-called minorities on the ticket, nowhere in this party. So, you know, it is what it is. If it's not a Confederate ideology on paper that has moved from the battlefields of the Civil War, the war between the states, and the ideology being brought to Washington, then show us something. Show us what these so-called minorities can do for the party. I mean, by all accounts, they seem to be bright minds. But right now, at this point in time in history, it's sad to say that, you know, the vast majority of so-called minority candidates in the Republican Party, especially Negroes, are water carriers. They can only carry water. And that's it. You see, earlier in the year, when they were voting for the speakership, you know, you have Representative Byron Donalds down here in the state of Florida. You know, his name gets called up as a nomination for speaker. But it's just a joke. It's just a joke. No one in their right mind watching at that particular time, you know, ever expected Byron Donalds would be the Speaker of the House. So why would his name be put up? The Democratic Party has already shown that they're not afraid to put a so-called minority candidate on the ticket, make him the leading nominee, and push him into the Oval Office. And then after that, you have to look at, okay, what kind of job was done? Did America, you know, lose prestige? Did America fall behind? because of the first African-American president. What did we lose versus what did we gain? And this is what you have to ask yourself as the American people. What did we lose versus what did we gain? And here's a party that is an open party to all who qualify. You know, all who want to champion the middle class and grow the economy from the middle class out. But still, you know, have protections, you know, there for millionaires and billionaires at the same time, versus a party who wants to shut, you know, most people out and only have millionaires and billionaires at the table, selling us a trickle-down economy that never trickles down. Or it does trickle, but the thirst is never quenched. The thirst is never quenched. So, you know, don't believe the hype. The Democratic Party right now in the United States of America is the party that gives so-called minorities and this 90-something plus percentile of Negroes who are voting Democrat in America. It gives you more seats at the table, more of a voice. And, you know, if there's any Republicans out there, voters, candidates, you know, office holders that beg to differ, we welcome you to come on, you know, the broadcast and make the case. And make the case. But, you know, as I said, with all the things that are happening in the world today that America can lead on, and, you know, the world will support it, the world will back it, the world will recognize that, you know, this is a country of intellectuals, and they're leading the world, and you know, we should somewhat follow here. It's not through the Republican Party. You saw how the world watched in horror when the former president and began to whisper and wonder, you know, what's going on in America. When the former President Trump was in office, tainting everything. Tainting everything. So, you know, we're debating and we're talking. You know, we're staunchly Democrat here, but you know, if there's a Republican right there doing the right thing, we welcome it. We're ready to be a voice for it. We're ready to give him the support. But right now, you know, we don't see it. We see candidates who are single digits in the polls. And a lot of it could be because they haven't stood up enough to the former president. That could be it. But, you know, right now, we have the same Republican script, you know, with the former president leading in the polls and more than likely to be the nominee. Now, you know, right now he's under indictment. He's going into a grifting mode again. You know, if you know some of the prosecutors or some of the investigators have sent him stuff in the mail, putting him on notice that, you know, he may have to show up in the court. Here goes the former president. You know, he goes on Truth Social, and in atypical fashion starts to talk about, you know, how this witch hunt is coming after him, and, you know, I need your help. And you know, it's really a low down dirty shame, because it just rinse, wash, and repeat. The beat goes on. The president, you know, does something that he knows is illegal or anti-presidential, to say the least. Creates a controversy, and then he begins to fundraise off of it. All this from a man who loves his country. Creates a controversy, goes out and, you know, goes on Truth Social to complain, to whine that it's a witch hunt, and then begin to fundraise. Never in a million years that I thought, you know, that I think I would live to see this, you know, where it got this bad. You've mostly seen, you know, when I was coming up, you mostly seen ex-military, ex-lawyers, darn good lawyers, you know, in some kind of way they served in some capacity, you know, in the military, whether it was full-time, whether it was National Guard, you know, or as I said, they were darn good lawyers. You know, they had some kind of background in law, in military, sometime a combination of both. But now here you have, you know, this new breed of Republican that's so far away from, you know, what they like to champion as a Ronald Reagan Republican. This new breed of reality show host Republican. Crooked real estate developer type Republican. And if we don't hold a line, come the election of 2024, it could be the end. After 247 years, a small amount of time, a meager amount of time, when it comes to how long a country held power, or how long, was a country that powerful, that country, that great nation. Here we are 247 years in. And, sadly, a lot of this is politics of race that we can't get past because, as I said, the ideology crept into the halls of power in Washington after they left the battlefields in 1864. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. This is where Lee surrendered. He surrendered the arms, but the idea was still alive and well. And so, where are you going to go? This 90-something plus percentile. This is our choice, Democrat or Republican. And, we have an obligation. We have a duty. We got a raw deal with Rutherford B. Hayes, right there during what was supposed to be Reconstruction. We got a raw deal. He sold us out. Then we had to deal with separate but equal. Then there was Jim Crow. Then there was indentured servitude, slavery by another name. During all these time periods, when these things were happening, we were seriously intimidated, didn't have the right to vote, didn't have sometimes not the desire to vote. There was situations of hopelessness. But just like those Slim cigarettes from Virginia, you've come a long way, baby. And we're here. Now the ball's in your court. Do you play or do you pass? And we're going to begin to see it, in less than a month. We're going to begin to see this Republican debate get started to go against what we have now. A president who is in office, who's rolled up both sleeves, determined to try to do what's best for America and Americans going forward. The president, the current president now, before he ran for this office, he didn't need a job. He wasn't, it was like he was financially, not well off, financially hurting, in a financial hard place. He didn't need the money. He didn't need the prestige. He already had, a reputation as being a staunch Democratic senator from Delaware. So, one can only figure that for the love of country. Unlike the former president, the current president, for the love of country, stepped out of the one foot that he had in retirement. He stepped out of it and decided to, jump out of the frying pan and directly into the fire that is Washington, D.C., and infighting and political polarization. You heard what the former Speaker of the House said when he was interviewed, John Boehner. He'd rather light his house on fire. Light his hair on fire. Then to get involved in these congressional scuffles, these congressional back and forths. And it's bad. It really is bad. We can understand the former Speaker Boehner's point of view. So you have to know that for the President Biden, to get back out into the fray that is Washington, D.C., this can only be for love of country. This can only be for love of country. Or what else? Of course, you see the Republicans, they're desperately reaching here. They're desperately reaching. And we have to send a message. We have to, there's too much going on. There's too much going on, you know, that we can, solve by working together, reaching across the aisles, instead of all these, useless investigations, these investigations to nowhere. What are the ideals? Why can't Republican politicians attack the president, for lack of a better word, their attack? Why can't they debate the issues? Why can't they come against the president on policy? Why can't there be a disagreement in policy? And instead of, you're running for office. So, and instead of tearing the other guy down so much and attacking the other guy so much, give us your position. Give us your position on a particular issue. You see the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, he's deploying buoys, barbed wire, possibly on Mexico's side of the river. And where is the solution here? Instead of, sitting down together and trying to come up with a comprehensive immigration plan that Mexico can respect, I'm quite sure that if we as a country sit down together and hammer it out, what immigration on the southern border is going to look like, it's quite possible that we can work something out with the country of Mexico, so that we work together as a country to make sure that the border works. The immigration process works. But once again, there's a double down here. There's a complaint that, Secretary Mayorkas is not doing his job. We don't have a border now. Come up with a comprehensive immigration plan. Come to the table. Now, to my fellow Democrats, it's quite possible. I mean, it's pretty much, when we're looking at it from a realistic point of view, that it's not going to be a coming to the table unless we have the blue wave in 2024. Then we can very well finally bring comprehensive immigration reform to the floor for a vote. And this is where it begins at for us. This is the beginning of a new America. The president said Build Back Better, and he's ready to finish the job within the next 4 years. And we as Democrats, of course, the president is a senior citizen. We get that. So we do need to have a backup plan. Could it be RFK Jr.? It looks highly unlikely, because his own family is denouncing it and some of his views. His own family is feeling ashamed and somewhat outraged by some of his views. And some of these views and some of his comments are bordering on racism. Like for instance, who the coronavirus was put here to target. What does this help anything? How does this help solve anything? By finger pointing at races. By finger pointing at races. Now, one thing that RFK Jr. hasn't said is, why the former president dismantled the pandemic board or this panel of experts that Obama left in place after Ebola, whatever scare there was during the Obama administration. He decided it was best to put a panel of experts, doctors or what have you, together, because he's thinking ahead as a president. He's thinking about what's best for the future of America. He put something together, and along comes Donald J. Trump and dismantles it in his quest to make America great again. And what did it do? Right there in the final year of his president, that dismantlement of that pandemic board came back to bite him. Came back to bite him in a serious way. And what did the Republican Party do? None other than what they always will do in that situation up to now, and it's double down. It's to double down. I mean, we'll give the president credit where credit is due. If he's responsible for the vaccine that came about, during the pandemic, before President Biden got in office, we'll give him credit where it's due. This is all about solving and trying to do what's best for the country. This is not about building a hedge around the party and keeping that hedge there and reinforcing that hedge, whether the party is right or wrong. This is not what this is here, ladies and gentlemen. We here at Soluble are trying to make the case as to why and how the Democratic Party can be the best party or the best party for America going forward. And we're giving you examples. We're giving you examples. The Republicans have to investigate. They don't have any legislation. They don't have any ideas for America unless you're in that 1% to 2% of millionaires and billionaires. That's the word on the street. But it seems to be proven true. It seems to be proven true. I mean, we have too many things going on right now, as I said. But leading the Republican agenda is investigations. And where does it go? Where does it lead? The FBI director, President Biden hasn't replaced him. FBI Director Wray is a Trump appointee. And the president has, the discretion or the authority to hire or fire in that position as he sees fit. President Biden has kept him on. He's kept FBI Director Wray on. And even he's a staunch Republican. But you've seen him at the hearings here a couple of weeks ago. He happened to disagree with this notion that there's a deep state biasness within the Bureau. Investigation after investigation. So, as I said, the Republicans are dumb, but it remains to be seen if the American voter is going to be dumber. It's going to be dumber. How is it that with all the challenges that we face today, the leading agenda, the leading thing that, we have the Republicans doing with their power that they have in the House is to, say it's something here with Hunter. We have to get Hunter Biden. Why? Because this is the only way you can get to the president. And ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. You know yourself. Presidential kids have a history of, behaving somewhat recklessly. Could just because their father is the president doesn't mean that they're, saints and not sinners. We've seen it throughout history. President's children. And, this is just a new low. This is just a new low. And I mean, it's like, how low can you go? How low can you go to, attack something, directed at the president on a personal level? That happens all the time with presidents' kids. The former President Bush, his twin daughters, all over the place, underage drinking, lying about their age, having fake identities to get into places that they weren't old enough to get into. This is just an example, but it happens all the time. And here you go, you have the Republicans trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. And so, now to my fellow Republican voters, if this is, what you champion into office, and so be it. And so be it. But the vast majority of Americans should know that it'll never work. It hasn't worked up to this point. It's smoke and mirrors. And when the wind blows, the smoke and mirrors will be exposed because it would disperse. And then you will be able to see that there's nothing there. But until that happens, you can take Soluble's word for it. We're bringing it to you live and direct. This is one investigation out of many that leads to nowhere. You know, a responsible party will accept responsibility, you know, for their actions. You know, they will sweep around their own front door first and foremost before they try to sweep around someone else's. And, you know, you constantly have the Republicans ready to pass the buck. You know, now that the former president is facing indictment, you know, let's deal with it. Let's deal with it for what it is. Let's look to see if there's any there. But no, the Republicans only want to bring up ancient history. Oh, well, you know, Hillary Rodham Clinton got away with it. Or, you know, Hillary wasn't pursued. How does that point to the Democrats? If you had Hillary in your sights, if you had her dead to the right, if you had her caught red-handed, why didn't Director Comey prosecute? Why didn't he bring a case? Because there's nothing there. This is just for distraction. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. This is just for distraction. And this is irresponsible of a party that claims to love their country. This is very irresponsible for a party that claims it loves its country. You know, and you have the speaker, you know, with the power that they have in the House by, you know, some 6-7 votes. Slim edge, slim majority. And now here you have the speaker, you know, floating this possibility of impeachment and playing games with the daily lives of American people, playing games with democracy. Monkey see, monkey do. I want to impeach a president just like you. On what grounds? You know, they won't tell us on what grounds. They want you on the edge of your seat until the 2024 elections are over with. And then you'll see there's nothing there. They want you on the edge of your seats, creating uncertainty, creating doubt in your mind, making you they want you to throw your hands up in disgust when it comes to President Biden. This is what happened with Hillary. This is what happened with Hillary. And now that the president is facing indictment and he looks like the possibility that he might face jail time, and this is the best that they can do in their house with their president. And, you know, it's one of these things where they look the other way as the president is doing wrong, doing things unpresidential, siding with Putin on the world stage. They're looking the other way. And so what this kind of basically boils down to is now they want to take offense because the Democrats have been voted in by the people. Let me say that once again. The Democrats have been voted in by the people, and they're doing their job against a corrupt, flawed politician. And I say that, you know, I say that very lightly because the president the former president, you know, really never, you know, got into politics like that. He may have donated some to Republican candidates that he liked. He may have donated some to Democratic candidates he liked. But I say that very lightly. I say that very, very lightly. And so, you know, it's up to you. Are you going to be dumber? And this, you know, is to the American people. This is to that 90-something percentile of Negroes who vote in the Democratic Party. Because, you know, more than anything, that's where, you know, those on the right, that's where they want the fracture to come from. They want to be able to break that voting block that is there, you know, in the Democratic Party. But what case can they make? What case can they make that they're, you know, that they're legislating on behalf of all of the American people? Whether you're born here, whether you immigrated here, you know, whether you came in through the southern border, whether you immigrated in through the northern border, you know, whether you came in, you know, on a visa and you decided to become a permanent citizen, however, whenever. And, this is it pretty much in a nutshell. A tale of two parties. A tale of two parties. One thing we want to touch on also, from the Republican side, we have Senator Tuberville holding up, military appointments, you know, um, so that these men in uniform can, report to their posts and commence to carrying out their duties. And it's his reasoning is that he wants some policy when it comes to abortion changed back to whatever way it was before. Now, this is very tone deaf. This is very tone deaf, and this is coming from, not from a Democratic point of view from us here at Soluble. This is coming from the point of view of an American citizen who just trying to set the record straight for, all service members. Now, there's an admirable quality. It should be, no matter from a man's point of view, no matter what emotional state you could think of when it comes to a woman, there's an admirable quality about a woman who wants to fight. And that's what, being in the military basically boils down to. You're willing to take up arms in defense of your country. And you have women that are willing to do this. Now, we've seen all the past reports, when it comes to sexual assault amongst the ranks. We just saw a damning report with the Coast Guard where a lot of things were redacted, where they attempted to bury a lot of things. And it's just, it's not so much tone deaf as the Senator Tuberville doesn't have any rhythm at all. Not to be in touch with the fact of, of course you're not a woman, but you have to try to put yourself in her shoes at some point in time when it comes to this situation. You have a woman who's willing to fight, which should be an admirable quality, willing to take up arms in defense of a country. As I said, sexual assault is a problem in the military, and it has been for a long time. Now, we don't know what the numbers are in particular. We've seen reports here and there enough to know that, it could be a serious problem where men can't behave like men, like gentlemen should. And, here's a woman who's decided to take up arms in defense of a country and displayed an admirable quality of courage by wanting to fight. And now she has to worry about not only her training and being able to, pass muster of what it takes to be a soldier in any branch of the military. She also has to worry about, being sexually assaulted, being groped, having lewd comments thrown her way. Senator Tuberville should know better. The senator should know better. Sexual assault is an issue in the military. We don't know in any particular situation where a woman comes forward and she's put in a situation where she has to have an abortion or has to consider abortion. So, this is something that probably needs to be in place for the protection of the woman. Unless Senator Tuberville is willing to come up with a plan or give us an idea of how he's determined to make male soldiers in the United States military behave accordingly. When it comes to female soldiers, they're under enough pressure already. But here's Senator Tuberville holding up appointments because of his outdated thinking. There's a lot of immunization that goes on in the military. There's a lot of immunization. We don't know how this is going to affect the life of an unborn child. Senator Tuberville doesn't know. And that's fine. It's fine that he doesn't know. The problem is, does he care? Does he care? And so, this is just, the daily happenings from an extreme right. That's not in tune with what's going on, in the military rank and file. And he will look at the numbers, do his research. He may reconsider. He may reconsider. And, last but not least, I would like to think that, there's nothing pleasant. I've never got the notion or the inkling idea that, women are going to have abortions and they're just so overjoyed about it. I haven't gotten that. I haven't gotten that feeling based on what I've seen, based on what I've analyzed. I haven't seen, where women are going in droves or in large numbers towards having abortions, and they're all just so overjoyed about it. This is a dark time for a woman. This is not a pleasant and happy time. So, our position here at Soluble is that, Senator Tuberville will consider this. Do your research. Look at the things that may be determining factors in a woman making this decision. Let me back that up. Being a determining factor by a woman in uniform who is making this kind of decision. And no, it's not an easy one. The senator is making it seem as if, women are just, out here being promiscuous and nights out on the town, behaving themselves loosely, and then they're looking for someone to, correct the mistake that they've made, or to make a mistake that they've made go away. That's not the case, Senator. That's not the case. So, here at Soluble, we ask that the senator do some research, look into the facts, look at the sexual assault rate. We just had a young woman killed here in Fort Hood, Texas, here a couple years ago. So it's out there. But yet the senator, stubbornly and seemingly without any, knowledge of all the facts, is holding up these military appointments, based on political biasness. Based on political biasness. And so, we have work to do, ladies and gentlemen. We have work to do. This is a tale of two sides, a tale of 2 points of view, a tale of how America should be taken into this next millennium. Who should lead us and in which direction we should be going. As I said, we have all kinds of things that are happening out here that we can correct, that we can make, that are wrong, that we can make right. We have things that are good that we can make better. But all the Republicans feel like, we need to be doing right now is investigating. Investigating what? A president's sons who pleads guilty to a couple of misdemeanors? It's the same old, because they don't have ideals for the future. Give me something on climate change. Planting 1 trillion trees, it may not be a bad idea. But could lowering emission standards be even a better idea? Could reduction of emissions be a better idea than planting 1 trillion trees? We won't know from a point of view from the right, from a position of the right. We won't know until they bring these ideas to the floor and bring them up for discussion and legislate them. But it's Hunter Biden. Which, for the slim majority of House Republicans and Speaker McCarthy, it's kind of like the equivalent of, while Rome burned, Nero fiddled. The country is burning. The country is flooding. The country is heating up. And the Speaker and the Republicans, with the slim majority they have, are fiddling around with an investigation to nowhere. But we have, thank God, we live in a democracy where we can vote it down. Now, we voted it down once, we voted it down twice. As I said, there hasn't been a red wave since 2016. There haven't been these consistent wins that the former president, told the American people about, most notably speaking to his followers, how they were going to get so sick of winning. We didn't see it. He had his chance. He was president of the United States of America. And so here we go again. Here's the next time around. We have a Democratic president now. So the Republicans will come around again to make the pitch to say, let us occupy the Oval Office. We've seen the same old story again with Donald J. DeSantis is faded in the polls. He wants to take this states' rights point of view from Florida and take it all the way to the halls of power in Washington and spread it over the whole country. And what it seems as if it's being rejected, and rightfully so. This creation of this fake problem. The Stop Woke Act. He chants freedom, but he's taking away all the freedoms of the citizens of Florida. He's violating the Sunshine Law. Well, meetings should be open, discussions should be open, it should be full disclosure for citizens of Florida. While he talks about freedom, so he's fading away. We know that if we show up, that we can vote the former president, we can get him out again. Like I said, we've seen this movie. But make no mistake about it, they're coming. They're going to have different ideas. Now, when it comes to DeSantis, and this thing where he's so against woke, it's just been revealed here over the last 24 to 48 hours that the ocean surrounding the peninsula state of Florida are woke. They're at a degree temperature now that's, starting to be somewhat startling, somewhat alarming to scientists. The oceans are woke. Now, can the governor walk and chew gum at the same time? Can he fight wokeness that he feels is within the American population? Can he fight wokeness and then fight the fact that the oceans are woke? They're heating up. The coral reefs are dying. What's the plan? What is the plan? So, it's going to be a question of real leadership with policies being put in place, legislation being introduced that's going to actually solve the problem. That's going to actually begin to attack whatever the problem is that affects America and Americans' way of life in a negative way every day. The Democrats are constantly putting it forward, but it takes two to tango. And the Republicans don't want to reach across the aisle and join hands in this do-si-do when it comes to what's good for America. I mean, we understand, the policy differences on some things, but there has to be some common ground here on something like climate change. The gun violence epidemic that we see in America with these semi-automatic weapons and these ghost guns. Will Republican politicians, Republican voters, Republican office holders join hands with Democrats simply on these two issues alone? We don't have to agree on taxes, foreign policy, energy policy, regulations. But you would think that here's two things: climate change and gun violence in America, the epidemic of gun violence in America. You would think that these two things at least, we can get Republican politicians to reach across the aisle to say, let's come up with a plan or a solution. In spite of all the other things that we can't agree on, let's agree on these two. Because they're affecting who? The everyday lives of us, American citizens, we the people. And we got so much more to, discuss leading up to the first round of Republican debates, going into the election season that will be 2024, which is right around the corner. We're going to continue to make the case. Now, don't get me wrong, in order to solve, if there's a Democrat that we need to make the case against, Democrats can be guilty of accepting bribes. Democratic politicians can be guilty of corruption. But our position here at Sawyer is we feel like when that happens, when it rears its ugly head, we can hold their feet to the fire and they'll respond accordingly. If they love their country, they'll ask for a second chance. They'll come out and admit their wrongdoing. But if they've gone too far, then they'll step down. They'll resign. We've seen it. We've seen it for the love of country. And we're trying to bring it out, our fellow politicians, our colleagues on the right side of the aisle. On the right side of the aisle. Now, going forward, we're going to be closely watching, where they're trying to slowly cook up this thing where, there should be an impeachment inquiry on the president because they can't get him on policy. They can't out legislate the Democrats. They don't want to bring a comprehensive immigration plan to the floor for a vote. So what do? They conjure up dumb. But here's the thing about it, for Democrats, in that 90-something plus percentile in particular, you don't have to be dumber here. Let them be dumb. You don't have to be dumber. We've seen it. Investigation after investigation after investigation. But, when it comes to their own house and their own party, nothing. Nothing. Here you have, like I said, the president's son pleading out to 2 misdemeanors. That's all the feds got. That's all they have. If they had more, they would bring it. If they had a felony, they would sock it to him. But this is all they got. And you have the Republicans trying to pile on. Meanwhile, with the former president, you have all the former president's men. The latest one, Giuliani. Now he's repenting. He's coming out saying he's wrong. He's the latest one. But the Republicans don't want to investigate. Here's Rudy fresh off of a hangover, talking about trial by combat. Now, after all that, all these days, a year and a half, a couple years later, now he's coming clean. But they don't want to investigate that. All the president's men. Who else besides Rudy? Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone. The list goes on. Corruption abound. But the Republicans don't want it. There's no need for investigations here. Let's vote them out. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. These are just a few of the reasons, as I said, where we should rock the vote. And in closing, to my fellow Democrats, we know what's at stake here. If we don't show up, we know what's at stake. To that 90-something plus percentile, you're power sharing now. You're power sharing. And, of course, we have issues that are sticking points. As far as that 90-something plus percentile people of color, we have sticking points with LGBTQ issues. We have sticking points with abortion ourselves. We have sticking points with entitlements. But that's what makes it such a great country, because we could still be staunch Democrats while not agreeing with everything that the Democratic Party embraces. That's what makes the country so great. You can debate these things within the Democratic Party and agree to disagree, and at the same time come up with a solution. What are you debating here? On the right side. And this is to that 90-something plus percentile of Democrats, people of color. Because if we click that 90 plus percentage, we win. So what do you got from the other side? What do they have to offer you? Now we want you to hold that thought until the next broadcast. What does the right, Republicans on the right, have to offer you? And we'll leave you with, repeal and replace. Remember that. You never saw nothing. They had the repeal part ready, but the replace, you never saw it. You never saw it. So what do they have to offer you? That's the question. Will we keep this 90-something plus percentile on the Democratic side, where we have seats at the table, not just a seat, but seats at the table, which gives us a voice? a voice to end a lot of the inequalities that we've experienced and past generations experienced in America. A lot of inequalities that past generations have fought and died for, that have suffered hardships for. We know what happened with the Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. And now here we are today, in spite of all of these attempts, separate but equal. Lynchings in the South, indentured servitude, slavery by another name. We're still here. But now we're here power sharing. And so, it's on us as loyal Democrats. Not just to stay staunchly Democrat. Look at the other side. What do they have to offer? As I said, maybe there's something that we can agree with that's coming from the right. Maybe there's something that we can agree with from the right that makes that actually and truly does make America great or greater. And we're not bad Democrats for reaching across the aisle to work with Republicans on those issues, whatever they may be. Like I said, that's what makes America great. But as of the start and ending of this broadcast, we don't have any seats there. We have water carriers. As I said, the Byron Donalds Republicans of today, the Ben Carsons of today, the Tim Scotts of today. They're water carriers. They're water carriers, in a states' rights party that really doesn't even consider them to be humans. The 3/5 is still whispered on the down low. The Make America Great Again was to say, after the first Black president, we went down. So let's make this thing great again by putting a Caucasian back in office and never making that mistake again. Where are the Republicans? Where are these so-called minorities in the Republican Party to push back against it? This shows you that they're water carriers. This should be a smack in the face to them as American citizens, regardless of race. This should be a smack in the face to them as American citizens. But no, they're right. They're loyal water carriers. And so, until next time, this is the thought that we want to leave you with. Which party gives you those seats at the table? Which party is a party of inclusion for all Americans, regardless of race, creed, or color, regardless of whether you were born in the country or whether you immigrated here? Which party is willing to put forth the best and brightest minds with a vision for America? And that's what it's all about. And we think always here at Soluble that we can solve this and have less partisanship, less gridlock by turning out to vote and, producing that true blue wave for the sake of American democracy and for the sake of securing a safe, prosperous, and healthy America for the future and for the future citizens, which are our children and grandchildren. We thank you for joining us tonight here at Soluble. We're always going to try to bring forth the facts, bring forth things that are eye-opening to you that you may not have seen before in order to bring about a solution. And we welcome discussion from opposing sides, whether it be independents, whether it be Republicans. Bring your ideals forward. And let's try to hopefully put all intelligent minds together, whether it be Republican, Democrat, or independent, and move America forward in a way that works best for all of us as American citizens. Until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us tonight. We say good night and God bless. This is Soluble signing off. Thank you.